could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Yuri Elkaim. He is a former professional athlete, an author, a business strategist, the founder and CEO of Healthpreneur. Hello Yuri, thank you for joining us today.
Hey Anna, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you. So let's just start a conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
So it started off, I wanted to play pro soccer when I was very young. So by the time I was 10 years old, that was my goal, was to play pro. So I dedicated all my teenage years to training and playing and doing whatever I could to make that happen. And I was very fortunate to have played professional soccer. I was able to play for a number of years in my early 20s. And then I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So backtracking a little bit, when I was 16, just before my 17th birthday, I lost all of my hair to an autoimmune condition in the space of 6 weeks. So my dad's Moroccan, had a lot of like bushy eyebrows, hair, the whole bit. So I went from that to nothing in the space of about a month and a half. That was a really big wake up call for me because I was like, what the heck just happened? I had no clue, no idea. So between my passion for soccer and being active, and then obviously wanting to figure out like why I had lost my hair and like how I could maybe figure things out, that really led me down this path of wanting to pursue studies in the human body, right? So I went to the University of Toronto to study kinesiology. Then I went back to school to study holistic nutrition. And through all of that journey, I was able to regrow my hair, although it fell out later on due to some other stuff. But what all that allowed me to really recognize was the fact that I had no clue about nutrition. I had no clue, like, even though I was active, like I was fit, but I wasn't healthy. And I started to realize my body was a toxic, like it was a toxic wasteland for, 20 some odd years of my life. So that really started to get me thinking about, man, like if I didn't know this stuff, there's got to be billions of others who don't know. And so initially I started off when I decided to stop playing soccer. I started off working as a personal trainer and nutritionist, really enjoyed working with people and helping them transform. But after 7 years of doing that, I was working 12 to 14 hours a day, the grind, one-on-one, overworked, underpaid. I was I was like, man, there's got to be more to this. Like, there's got to be more to life than this. I had a bigger vision for what I wanted to do. I was in my late 20s by that time, and I knew that I couldn't keep doing that. So I was working with a bit of a mindset coach at the time, and he suggested, why not set up a website? And I was like, cool. This is back in like 2005. So didn't know what I was doing, set up a website, and eventually turned my knowledge of fitness and nutrition into some products that we tried to sell online. When I say tried, I mean my first year I made $6,000, right? So like I wasn't doing much. So but the goal was really to, how can I help more people? How can I live a better quality of life in the process? How can I reach a much bigger audience without trading my time in the process? And that's kind of how it started. But the first 3 years of that business was a real grind. I was making poverty line income for 3 years, and then during that time, I was also completely getting rid of all my in-person clients. So my income was very, very low. And then at the end of 2009, I realized I didn't have all the answers. So I said, well, maybe I should hire a business coach, like someone who can actually teach me what I can't see. And that was the inflection point for that business eventually going on to become very successful. And we helped 500,000 people to amazing health outcomes. I became a New York Times bestselling author. I was on Dr. Oz, the doctors, the whole thing, and ran that business for 13 years. And I was like, you know what? I think I've said everything I can say about nutrition, fitness, health. And I was thinking about getting out of the business. And at that time, I had a lot of other people in our space start asking me for business advice. They're like, hey man, like what have you been doing to grow this business? And I was like, well, I don't know. I just kind of figured some stuff out. And if you're at something long enough, you do it. And so that started to plant the seed for maybe there's an opportunity here to help other health professionals with their business because they're amazing. They have this magic that can help so many people, but they just don't know how to get it out. So that became the seed for Healthpreneur. And that's 7 years ago now. So during that process, I sold my health business online. I went full time into Healthpreneur. And now we're the leading company in the world in helping health professionals build scalable businesses, coaching businesses specifically that transform more lives. And our focus is really on helping them move away from the one-on-one, the clinic, the gym, the brick and mortar. I see it as a prison, to be honest. Like you can't really scale that very efficiently. And I just want to really teach what's worked for me. Right? We've really been building a business that's been online, helping people virtually, and offering them a lot more time and location freedom. So that's been the journey. And we've got very, very big ambitions and goals for how we want to disrupt the healthcare system and help a lot more people with a better model of care and helping health professionals build better businesses so they can reach those people. So that's kind of the journey in a nutshell.
Wow. Yes, it's a lot of information to take in, but I see how you found the path of really applying your skills in a more efficient way where you can reach more people and make a more impact going online and scaling your business and also helping others to do the same. Because I think in the traditional paradigm, like we always think, how can we really impact a person working online as a coach, as a consultant, right? So we kind of used to the old way of doing things, and we don't see the opportunity that is really emerging right now in this online space. And sometimes we just need to learn more about tools and techniques that is available, but maybe we're just not familiar with, that will bring us to this place where we have the freedom, because a lot of people searching for this, they want to find the freedom to live their life, to have this lifestyle, to have the time for themselves, for their family, and really feel this type of fulfillment and joy. But how can I do that if I trade my time for money every single day, put in 40, 50 hours a week? So it has to be another way. And it is another way. But for us to really accept it as an opportunity, we need to see that it worked for other people. We need to see like the evidence and how it's going to work for me, let's say. So I just want you to elaborate more on the approach or the strategy that you use in your own business and for those who you're trying to help in Healthpreneur right now.
Yeah. So the way I think of this is as you said, I do think, I know this because I've seen it thousands of times. When you help somebody over Zoom, for instance, or virtually, you don't actually physically see them, or if you're a manual practitioner, you don't touch them. Your clients actually get better results. And when I say this, people are like, you're crazy, that's BS, there's no way. And I'm not saying there's no time and place for chiropractic or massage or stuff. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is your clients will get better results. And that really upsets a lot of people who have been taught in a very closed boxed system, which is the only way to help people is have them come into a clinic, work with them one-on-one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The journey that I've gone on is like, I was a personal trainer who worked with people in person. And I was able to move from that into building a very substantial online business that helped 1,000 times more people and helped them get better results. So how is that possible? And how have we helped our clients do the same? The reality is, step number one is you have to be open-minded to the fact that maybe you don't know what you don't know. So for instance, I like to use the example of if I'm talking to a chiropractor, they're like, well, I don't know what this looks like. I'm like, well, how are you supposed to know what this looks like? You've never done it. When you went to chiropractic college, did you know how to adjust spines before you went to school? No, that's why you went to school, right? So but there's a belief that they had going to school that they could help people by adjusting their spines, where there's a lower belief potentially is that they don't know if they can help people online. That's changing. There are more and more practitioners, whether they're knowledge-based or manual practitioners, that are starting to see the possibilities. And what I hope to do through my content that I share for free on YouTube and online is to at least get people thinking like that is possible, because I don't want to have someone come in as a client and for me to spend a whole year trying to convince them that it is. I don't need to waste my time, right? I need someone coming in saying like, you know what, I might not be sure what this looks like yet, but I know it's possible. So the first step is to have an open mind to the possibility that you can help people by getting paid for what you know, not what you do. Getting paid for your brains, not what you're doing with your body. And so what that means is really learning how to productize your service. So as an example, the first product that I created for my fitness business when I came online was a follow-along workout program that was an audio guided workout that was just like basically when the iPod had just come out. We were one of the first providers of audio guided workouts. And I had a client that gave me this idea. He's like, why don't you put your voice on tape? And I was like, that's a really good idea. And I never thought of how I could do this. And then I thought, well, what if I just recorded myself as if I were working out with a client so they could put me on their headphones and I'd be guiding them through their workout, even when I wasn't there. And that was my first big aha to be like, oh my God, like, so I don't have to be with my clients and I can still be with them and they're still getting results. That was like, it was such a breakthrough for me. And that was the eye opener to be like, hold on, well, how else could I do this? So that just understanding the possibility is really important. The second thing with respect to productizing your service, this is the second thing. So basically taking what you do with people, whether it's in person or whatever, and really extracting what that recipe is. What, like if someone were to have a consult with you, like what's the process you take them through? What are the questions you ask? What are the milestones you want someone to achieve? And really start to document that. The third thing is to really understand that your clients will get better results with less of you. And what I mean by that is I've never met a coach or a practitioner who didn't want their patients or clients to take more ownership of their own healing journey. So what happens in the traditional model, I call this the doctor-centric model, is patient goes to see doctor or practitioner, they swipe credit card, they have a session, they get a little bit better, a little bit of clarity, and then a week later, they go back and do it again. And nothing happens in between. And so when you were working with somebody online, what happens is you could also do that, which is fine. But what we really encourage our clients to do is build out a curriculum that a client will follow independent of their time with you. So let's say you have a call with a client once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever it is, if you're doing one-on-one as an example, your client does most of the work on their own. And that's a really positive thing because now they take more ownership of their own healing journey. So let's say they have a physical ailment, they have to do some stretching, some exercises, whatever. All of that stuff is going to be more powerful than if they just saw the practitioner once a week to get some hands-on work done. And so it's understanding that when the client takes more ownership of their own healing, they actually get better results. So whether this is like physical stuff or mental stuff or anything else, like anytime we have our clients, we're proactively doing more of the stuff and less on you as the coach or practitioner, they will get better results. And so that's really from a delivery perspective, how we help our clients start to think through what that could look like. And a really simple framework we help our clients with, we call it the 3C model. So curriculum is the base. So every one of your clients would go through kind of a preset curriculum. In order to do that, you have to be targeting one single target market. So you got to really narrow it down to be a specialist. You can't just help everyone. It's kind of one of the biggest mistakes in our space. Number two is you build a community of clients on top of that. So the clients start to support each other so they can rely on each other as opposed to you for everything. And then on top of that, you layer on the coaching. So you've got coaching at the top, community and curriculum. The coaching is the smallest piece of that because if it's not, then you're basically trading time for money just in a virtual setting. And it's basically just the same as if you were in person with people. Right. So that's the model that we teach our clients to build out in their businesses so they can ultimately help more people at the same time and obviously work a little bit less if they want to.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of simple approach if you think about it, but the way that you make that foundation for your business, it's gonna free up a lot of time for you as a coach, as a consultant, and you don't need to see them every day. You can just do like weekly calls or I don't know, a couple of weeks meetings with them to make sure they're on track. But I think the most important part is them taking that responsibility and being empowered, knowing that they are in control of their health journey. And that's what ultimately will bring the success as a long-term success as well, because if they're going to be always relying on you, it's not sustainable. It
Yeah.
has to be done from the beginning, this understanding that you're going to be the most important person in your life. You have to think about how you going to make sure that you stay on track by following this curriculum. And I will be with you all way, like always. If you have any questions, you can ask me. But with them taking that responsibility and being in a driver's seat of the health journey, I think it's very important. And it will really transform, the whole process of becoming the person that they envision to be. And
Hopefully.
the community of the same like-minded people who going through the same journey, I think it will elevate them and be encouraging at the same time. And I think it's just like the success formula for us to really look into, because it will be the new way of approaching business, and you can do so much with that and scale. So that's the most important thing. How can you scale, right? If you found this I would say model where you have the time to yourself, this is how you can do it. Otherwise, it's just like we just mentioned, trading time for money. But this is a way to do it. And I think like you have a lot of stories of the clients that you coached, and maybe you can bring up some I don't know, examples of people scaling their business, so we can see that it's also possible in different I would say professions. That I know you working mostly with health professional clients, but if you can just mention what are the businesses that they were able to scale at that point, and how long did it take them? So once they start following this model, and for those who are maybe considering to try it, how long on average you think you're going to see the result of you doing that consistently?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm sharing here is applicable to any business. Like you could be a mortgage broker and this stuff still applies, right? We just happen to only focus on health professionals because that's my bread and butter. But when I look at scale, it's a really simple formula. It's leverage times learning. So when you're looking to scale something, if we think of leverage, think of it as systems or people or processes or a combination of all three. When you think of learning, think of skills. So what's the difference between someone who grows their business very quickly versus someone who consistently stays stuck for years? It's they lack either one of those two things. So as an example, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, and this is not just health professionals, but any business owner, is they're at such a beginning stage of their business and they want to outsource their marketing to an agency. I actually just spoke with someone yesterday on Instagram about this. I said, do you mind if I ask you a challenging question? He's like, sure. I'm like, why on earth would you outsource the most important part of your business to an agency and you're making less than 5K a month? And he's like, I don't know. That's a good question. I just need more leads. I'm like, well, here's the thing. Until you build the skill of knowing how to get more leads and converting them into clients, and you're continuing to outsource all that to an agency, you will always be at the mercy of someone else who, in quite honesty, for what you're paying them, is probably not that good. And as soon as they leave, you're screwed and back at ground zero with nothing. And this is why it's really important to understand that a lot of people, when they invest in themselves or their business or coaching, they're always looking for these guarantees. And I'm like, what kind of guarantee? What are you talking about? When you went to school and you dropped $100,000 on your tuition, there was no guarantee, right? You went to class, everyone went through the same curriculum, same professor, but did everyone get the same grade? No. What's the difference? The difference is how each individual showed up. how they did the work, if they studied, etc. And the same thing is what we have to take that same mindset with respect to our business. Like, we're all grown adults, but I think most adults are just really big babies, and they're pointing fingers at other people for, like, I got burned and this didn't work. It's like, no, that works. You probably didn't work. Let's just address that. So the first thing, like, in scaling anything, is you have to build the required skills before you consider outsourcing them. Like, I don't do much in my business anymore, but I did everything. I did everything. The copywriting, the content, the sales calls, the delivery, the admin, every single thing in the business. Now, I didn't do everything for the same amount of time. There were certain things I offloaded, but you have to learn the skills, at least the very important skills that are required to help you get to the next level. It doesn't matter what business you're running. If you're starting your business up until about $500,000 in revenue, the most important skill you have to build is sales and marketing, right? Learning how to generate demand, generate leads, turning those leads into customers or clients. If you can't do that, you will not exist in business. It's the most important thing. And with that said, disclaimer, you have to be selling something good, right? Whether it's a supplement, product, or a service, it has to be good. But where a lot of people get stuck is they spend so much time trying to get the products perfect that they never go to market. And then by the time they do, it's too late. So you want to have it good enough that it's going to serve people and help them and not be a piece of junk. But you have to put the time in to build the skills of understanding, like, what is magnetic messaging? How do you connect with people who don't even know you? And if you're speaking with them on the phone or on Zoom or on video or on stage, how do you move people to action? How do you improve your communication skills? These are things you can't outsource. And if you do, you will suffer for a very, very long time. So the skill piece is very important, and those skills change as you grow in business. A $500,000 business, as the owner of that, you have different skills there than if you ran a $20 million business. The skills at that level are different. They're more people, leadership related, et cetera. But there's a journey. So that's the first piece of scaling. The second piece is the systems, or the leverage. So an example I like to use is Uber. So if you think of leverage, is you put an input in and you get an output out. If you have no leverage, you put 1 unit in, you get 1 unit out, right? So trading time for money as an example. You could have more leverage in that model by simply charging more, but there's a ceiling. So if we think of an Uber driver gets paid in direct proportion to the number of rides that they do on a daily basis, right? So they put 5 hours in, they do 5 rides or whatever it is, that's how much they get paid. There's very, very little leverage there, because the less they work, the less they make. The more they work, the more they make. So it's really just kind of a tick for tat type of situation. By contrast, the CEO of Uber has a astronomical amount of leverage, because he has tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of drivers who are doing all the driving. He's not doing anything other than leadership and the bigger stuff. But because they're the ones doing all the work, he's got a small amount of input for a massive output. And that's called leverage, right? So he has a very, very strong fulcrum point, a lever that, at the push of a button, things are happening, versus him doing all the driving himself. So when we think of how does that apply to our business, think of, well, number one, if it's just you, you have very little leverage. But if it's just you, you can still create processes. You can, as an example, so when I was talking about productizing your service, that's an example of leverage. Because now you can take what you do in a very unleveraged fashion, document it, processize it, and then you can have people run that process or go through that with less of you involved. You can systemize things, right? You can look at, how do I systemize what I'm doing on a daily basis so that it can be done more efficiently? And then ultimately, you can hire people, right? Once you're at a point in your game, in your business where you are making decent revenue, you've got good cash flow, how can you hire 1, 2, 3, however many people to now take things off your plate so you can buy back more of your time and your business continues to grow independent of your effort? So that's leverage, right? So that's really how we scale. So whatever business model or type of business you have, think through where's the leverage? Where's the learning? How can I improve my skills? And how can I build up the systems, people, and or processes? When you combine those, that's how you scale.
Wow. Yeah. So I think a lot of times we kind of don't trust that other people would do the same job as we do. That's why we have hard time really outsourcing something. We think like we gonna be the one doing all the work, but then there is no way to scale that business. So we have to, like you said, kind of extract that knowledge and expertise and put in a system and really like make a product out of it. And then there is more opportunities how we can scale that business. And I think a lot of people still kind of learning about the online space, and it's becoming more of a kind of like a new way of doing things, but people are still not sure how it's going to look like. And a lot of times we need to learn about advertisement as well, like how to set up the ads the right way, like what are the parameters and all of that to bring the leads into our business. So it could, it could really like see the result of us investing that money and how it's going to look like on the other end. And so we know exactly what we're getting for what we're paying, like it has to be something for us to like see this conversion rate. Let's say we know it converts like from $1 to $3, right? And it has to be consistent and repeatable in a way that we trust this process. It works. We know it works for sure. And we know how much we need to invest and how much to get in the end. So what is the main focus when it comes to advertising and like learning about how, what exactly is the most important aspect of all of that?
Yeah. I think it's not the technology or the platform, it's the psychology more than anything. So the more you know about your perfect client or customer, that's everything. We, like all of our clients run advertising to generate leads in business. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, listen, if your numbers are not what you want them to be, just understand that you have a messaging issue, right? Very, very, unless your offer is horrible, which very often it's not in their case, it's not so much about the targeting, the audience selection, that stuff. I mean, sure, that makes a difference. But the thing, as an example, with Facebook and Instagram, which is Meta, there's 3 billion users on the platform. And the advertising on that platform now is so much easier than it was 5 years ago. Because what they've done is they've gotten away from a lot of the granular targeting. So like when I first started advertising on Facebook, I could target Dr. Oz, I could target very specific people or pages on Facebook. You can't really do that anymore. So people started freaking out. They're like, oh, I can't target like I used to. I'm like, that's amazing because it's actually easier. Because now instead of having a micro audience of 200,000 people, your audience, your base audience might be 30 million. And people initially they're like, well, that's not as efficient. I'm like, well, kind of. But what Facebook has become so good at, and when I say Facebook, I mean Instagram, Facebook, it's the same thing. The algorithm is so advanced that if your messaging is on point and people convert into your funnel, Meta, Facebook, Instagram will find more of those people. So even though the audience is so much bigger, because the algorithm is so much more advanced than it was 5 years ago, you actually don't need to be as micro targeted with your audience selection, but you do have to be viciously awesome with your messaging. And what that means, and this is actually a really important thing because messaging is everything online, like the ability to connect with your end user, your customer, your target market. It doesn't matter if you're advertising or posting content on social media. If you put stuff out there that doesn't resonate with people, it's never going to work, whether it's a video on YouTube, a post on Instagram, or a paid ad. So the one thing to really, really, really focus on is not your products. Like, I mean, sure, your service, product, whatever is important, but you have to think about what is my avatar, my perfect client experiencing right now? And how can I enter that conversation in their mind? What are other alternatives that they've tried? What are their frustration points? What don't they want to do? What would they rather have done easier? And if you understand who that person is intimately, your messaging will be light years ahead of everyone else who's running ads with just like 10% coupon codes for whatever it is. So that's the key. It's just really, really understanding your audience. And that's, for us, for health professionals, they actually have a bit of an advantage because they've been working with clients perhaps in person for many years. So it's like you've been speaking to these people. You don't have to do an online survey. Like you have the data from these conversations. And
Right.
if someone watching or listening to this doesn't have that luxury, then you can use Amazon reviews for similar products that they've purchased. Like, what are the reviews saying about what they liked, what they didn't, the deep emotional stuff? You can look at Reddit forums. You can even ask ChatGPT to give you a deep dive into your perfect persona, your avatar. What are the things that they say to themselves? What are the things that they tried that are not successful with? And there's a lot of really simple ways to improve your messaging, and that's really where it all starts. So it's not about iOS 13, 14.5 changes, none of that stuff. Like it's the messaging all the time.
Yes. No, it's very on point, and I think to understand what they're struggling with, what their pain points, and how they can see themselves like transform with your product and service, and what you can bring to them, maybe something new that they never heard of or never tried this new approach or whatever that might be. But yeah, really like putting yourself in the shoes of that person struggling with this problem or issue and see yourself as your client and what would you want to have, I would say, as a solution to your problem, right? And this is how you draft your the messaging. And also, like, how about the visual of it? Like, do you think there's something that could grab somebody else's attention? One, I would say, I don't know, picture over video, or it doesn't matter at all?
Yeah, I mean, the visual, so on Facebook and Instagram specifically, the visual, like the creative, is about 70% of the equation. So the visual, like the image or the video, stops the scroll. That's the purpose of it, is to grab people's attention and to get them to like take a second and like read or watch. So the key with social media is using images that look very native. Some people, they create these like nice looking images that look like an ad. So they don't perform as well. Try again, and you just have to test this stuff. At the end of the day, you've got to test different ideas and concepts. But historically, I mean, not just myself, but a lot of other people I know who spend a lot of money on advertising, when you make your ads look like content, they will do a lot better. So what I mean by that is if you have a picture on your iPhone that you would have posted on your personal profile, that's probably a better picture to use than something that some graphic designer is going to make all pretty and looking all branded and corporate. Like people are very good at sniffing out BS and when they're being sold to. So we want to slide under the radar to be like super casual, and video can also work very well. We have found that professional video, and this is again only in our case, I know there's a lot of different businesses and verticals and stuff. We have found that the more professional we try to be with our videos on Facebook, the worse they do. I think YouTube is a bit of a different animal, but one of my best videos that we ran for more than a year and a half on Facebook, which is very rare, it was literally on a whim. I didn't think about it. I took out my iPhone. The lighting was terrible. I was wearing like a green Nike sweater, and that was our best performing video for a year and a half on Facebook. It was crazy. And then we had all these other videos that we had like, set the scene and done all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like failure, failure, failure. So you just, at the end of the day, you have to test, right? And you want to test a lot of stuff so that you can learn for your offer, for your market, what seems to work better, because it's very hard when you look at advertising to make blanket statements like this works better than this all the time. It's very hard to say that. And I think it's also good to challenge assumptions. So even though I just said use photos that are native, cool. Well, why not try a meme as well, right? Try something different. And like if you have a consistent winner, like cool, how can we challenge that with some new creativity? And I think that's the best way to learn and build the skill, because then you have a lot of experience and context that a lot of people just don't have, and they think they do. And there's no one way to do things. And that's when I hear people say, well, this is the one way you got to do it. I'm like, nah, you haven't been doing this very long, because there's just so many variables, and you just have to be in the trenches for a long time to see what those are.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like you just mentioned, sometimes we have this idea of everything was perfect and we had this amazing visual, it will perform the best, but it's not always the case. And we have to test and see, from the experience, what works better, and then learn from it. Everything is just for us to learn, really, and adjust. And it's okay if we can just, like, if something didn't work, it still gave us the information. That's what people think. Like, you can't expect everything to work from the first go, you have to be for some time to really like analyze the data. And yeah, like a lot of people really thinking about like quitting this 9 to 5, and they feel like unfulfilled, but at the same time they always have excuses that they don't have enough time to start something on the side or their own business. What would be like your advice for them to really create that time in order to transition into a new way of doing things, and maybe using their expertise that they already have working 9 to 5 into building their business?
My answer is really simple. If someone says stuff like that, they simply don't want it. They don't want it badly enough. That's it. The problem with the Western world is we all live in a very comfortable blankie, right? Even if someone's in a job they don't like and they're making money, they're comfortable, right? Now, there comes a point where some people in that same situation cannot tolerate that, and that is not okay for them. That was my situation when I was, 7 years in training clients. I'm like, I can't, I'm done. This is over. I was willing to burn the bridges and go forth on my dream. 95% of people on this planet are not willing to do that. And it's really, really sad, because we have conversations with people like this all the time. They're like, oh my God, I want this thing. And, here's my future. And then they don't do it because either they don't want it badly enough, or they don't believe the solution that they're looking at is going to help them get there. Right. So it's kind of one or the other. If you really, really want this, then what don't you believe about this that can help you get there? Or you actually don't really want this. So there's that piece. Like when it comes to desire, part of it, I think, is some people don't believe in themselves. Right. I have a very high amount of confidence in myself in many areas of life, not every area, but I always have this belief that no matter what I do, I'm going to figure it out. No matter what. And the more I've lived on this planet, the more reference points I have for that. I don't stress about anything. I'm like, even in the worst possible scenario, I'm like, this is not ideal, but it always works out. It's going to be great. And that just takes time. Like it helps when you're in business for 20 years. But when you're starting, you're making that transition. It's like, shit, like, what do I do? So for me, like it really comes down to how badly do you want it? Because the saying of like, when it's a must, we'll find a way. When it's not, we'll find an excuse is, I think, really, really applicable here. You're in a 9 to 5, you hate it, you don't feel fulfilled. Cool. Well, that's the scenario. It's not going to get better. Scenario B is the dream you want to build. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Like, is it going to work? What if it doesn't work? What if you don't make any money? What if it's a failure? What if you're a failure? What are people going to think about you? Like all this stuff. Well, that's the price of admission to make your dream a reality. Like, just so what? Suck it up. I've got friends from high school. They're like, "Oh man, you're so lucky with what you've built." I'm like, "Dude, I'm not lucky. I mean, I'm sure I'm lucky in certain ways, obviously, but I was very intentional about the decision I made. I said, I will not go down this path. I'm going down this path. This path is littered with potholes and broken bridges and stairways that go into the clouds that I have no idea where they go, and arrows coming from either side, but I'm still willing to go that path because I know it's worth it." And that's the big thing with most people, is they just don't want it badly enough. And we see it all the time, especially this time of year, right? New Year's resolutions, this is the year. And then by February, they're right back to where they started. And it's like, the very fact you're like, don't be the type of person who requires a date like January 1st to change your life, because there's so much momentum in the opposite direction that it's very hard to do anything now. It's like if you never worked out in your life, and then you start working out, it's going to feel really, really horrible. And then you're going to be like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. And you're going to go back to the way things were. So I'm all about just going back to the 9 to 5 thing. You don't have to quit your job and start your dream. Like, you don't have to do that.
Right.
But you have to find a way to find the time, right? We work with very busy practitioners who are grinding away 12 hours a day in their practice, and they say they want to build this dream. I'm like, that's awesome. Take out your phone and show me your screen time. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, go to settings. There's a thing called screen time, and tell me what number you see on there. And this is a good activity for anyone to do. And we're talking like busy health professionals here, 3, 4, 5 hours a day on their phone. I'm like, oh, looks like we found some time. Do you think you could put 1 or 2 hours of that aside to build your dream, or is it really not that important to you? Because all the excuses in the world, just like when people are like, well, I'm like, I don't care. You just don't want this badly enough. So just say it. Like, so when you're so what I did when I transitioned was I was working all day long. It was like 9 till 9, like 7 till 7. I didn't have time. So what I did is I put 1 hour aside every single day. So at my lunch break, I locked myself in an office at the gym, and I started doing, I don't even know what I was doing. To be honest, I had no plan. I had no strategy. I had nothing. So I was doing something, maybe creating content for my first program, but I started doing something every single day for an hour. Everyone can find an hour. You put it in your calendar, you make time for it. Whether you get up earlier or whatever, you got to find the time. That's how it started for the first couple months. And then I was like, okay, there needs to be a sacrifice at some point. So if I'm super busy and I have no extra time, I have to sacrifice to some degree what I'm currently doing. Now, if you're in a 9 to 5, you may not have to sacrifice 9 to 5, but you might have to sacrifice watching Netflix at night, as an example. So maybe it's like, you know what, every single night, I'm going to take 2 hours or whatever it is. Instead of watching that show, I'm going to build my dream. So you start to throttle how you use your time. And then eventually, so in my case, I went from kind of doing a bit more of that to eventually looking at my calendar and saying, okay, I'm not really getting a lot of energy from working with certain clients. I'm going to basically just not work with them anymore, and I'm going to take them off my calendar. So I started throttling down my client load in person, knowing that my income was going to drop. And then I started having more time to build my dream. Now, it certainly helps if you know what the hell to do with that time to build the dream. Like if you don't, find support on that, because otherwise you're just wasting time. So in that case, there was a bit of a sacrifice initially, but all success comes with sacrifice. So I knew like, okay, this is temporary. It sucks. I know, whatever, but I'm building the dream. It's going to be worth it. Then I got to a point where I just said, okay, a couple days a week, I'm working with people in person. A couple days a week, I'm working on my online business. And then I started to just level out. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this full time. And then I moved everything over online. I told my clients, like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Some of them stayed. Some of them were like, cool, all the best. And I was fine. So that was a transition for me. And that's, it's not too dissimilar for what a lot of 9 to 5ers can do as well. So I would get to a point where your quote unquote side hustle is close enough to what you're making with your job to feel comfortable to move away from that. Unless you're a maniac like I am, and you're like, you know what, screw this, I'm out. And you have some savings you can rely on, and you're just going to build the dream. But I understand not everyone's like that.
Definitely. And it's hard to make that first decision. And it starts really from managing our time on a daily basis. And that's all up to us. And how bad do you want that for yourself? Where do you see yourself in like 3-5 years from today? And nothing will change unless you make that change. And for you just wishing and thinking that one day something will appear, it's just, again, like you have to start making the decision. You have to start making the change for yourself. And then again, we don't know all the steps that required in order to get where we want, but we can start and see what will unfold for us and how we can learn And like you said, you don't have to quit your job. You just need to start doing something and using that time efficiently, knowing that you are investing in your future, and it's temporary. It's temporary, and it's creating that transitioning period where you can just really go all in on what you love doing. Because I feel like everybody deserves to have this type of work where they don't feel like they're working. They're really enjoying this process. But for us to get there, we have to create it for ourselves. And we have to be intentional and really put into work and effort and know that, yes, it will require some time in the beginning, but we also have to believe in ourselves that we can. And every one of us can. It's just matter of the mindset that we're in, how we can really like motivate ourselves. But if you have this type of job where you don't feel like you fulfilled or you're happy, you have that pain that is not going to go away. And that pain really is stronger than the pain of the transition that you envision.
Yeah.
That's where you start making moves and action. That's where you see like there's a possibility. But otherwise, we have to just start taking that responsibility for ourselves and making that happen. And
Well,
I'm
that's
so
why
glad. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. I mean, that's why I have so much respect for people who immigrate from other countries to North America, right? Now you're Russian. I don't necessarily know like, that story, but I know a lot of people who they gave up everything back home to come to an unknown land that promised a brighter future. Like medical doctors in India who are now driving taxi cabs in Toronto just so that they could give their kids a better opportunity. I'm like, the thing is, there's so many people who are doing this every single day. And I think when we look at that compared to just leaving your job and transitioning to your dream, it's a pretty small sacrifice compared to moving across the world, But I have a tremendous amount of respect for people who do stuff like that, who just pursue their dream, because a lot of people talk about stuff and don't do anything about it. And it drives me crazy. I'm like, just stop talking about it then, just stay where you are. It is what it is. But if you want to change. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
It's definitely worth it. And we are the one who's going to make that change for ourselves.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. And for those who would like to connect with you online, how can they find you?
Probably the best place is Instagram. My username is @healthpreneur. And then if you want to check out our content on YouTube, it's the same username on YouTube. We post several videos a week to help you guys with your mindset, business, all that good stuff. And we share a lot of our best stuff on there. So those are probably the two best places.
Yes, thank you. And also I'm going to add it in the show notes as well. And as we close today, what would be the thought for our listeners?
Well, I mean, just kind of piggybacking on what we just finished with, I think anything worthwhile isn't easy. So if what you're about to do feels challenging and creates fear inside of you to some degree, that's probably the right thing for you to do. Because if you're very, 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 very comfortable, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're a growth-oriented person, like if you value growth, you're never going to be happy if you stay comfortable. And so just understand that comfort is comfortable and growth is not comfortable. So courage doesn't feel good, confidence does, but you don't get confident unless you use courage.
Yes, thank you. I hope you enjoy your day.
Thanks so much, Anna.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.